What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's second stimulus check update, stimulus package update, and news report for Friday, December 18th. Today is an extremely important day. Today is deadline day. Today is the day that Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell need to have an agreement on the current $900 billion stimulus package. Today is also the day that the government funding will run out. It was actually supposed to run out last week. They did a 1-week stopgap bill. That will end today. Now, this means if there is no bill passed by both the House, the Senate, and signed into law by President Trump, and there's no stopgap bill for the next week or possibly 2 to 3 days, then the government will shut down for the next few days. Now, this is all extremely important. But something happened yesterday that is also extremely important, and I want to bring this to you because this came out a little bit after I did my last video yesterday. So I didn't want to just come out and do another video and bog you guys down with more information, more updates. So I want to talk about what happened yesterday right now, because this is extremely important moving into these negotiations. What is being reported by the Washington Post yesterday is President Trump was about to demand $2,000 stimulus checks to all Americans. This would have been huge. And here's the reason why I say this. I say this would have been huge because President Trump has done this in the past. But what happens when President Trump steps in, jumps on his phone and starts tweeting, what usually happens is it slows down the negotiation process. It makes negotiations harder for Republicans because now their leader is saying we need more, but Republicans are like, no, let's spend less. So now what's going on is the aides, the White House aides, according to this report, the White House aides stepped in and urged President Trump, do not put out any press release, do not talk to the media, do not post anything on Twitter, do not mention anything about a $2,000 stimulus check, because this would not only delay stimulus and this COVID relief package that is currently being negotiated, but this could ultimately derail the entire negotiations. And that would have been terrible. Now, at this point, almost anything could derail these stimulus negotiations. And this is one of the reasons why people are being very delicate with what they say, with the words that they use. Because anything right now, at this point, as Mitch McConnell says, we are on the 1-yard line, at anything right now could completely just blow up this entire thing. So, that is what we know. President Trump is willing to do $2,000 stimulus checks. But here's the other issue. Right now, this is a $900 billion stimulus package. That includes $600 in stimulus checks and $300 per week for unemployment benefits. Well, if we add in $2,000 stimulus checks, that would essentially take this from from $748 billion, it would add on roughly $500 billion to that total. So we're looking at a little bit under $1.3 trillion, and anything over $1 trillion, Republicans say, no, we're not going to support that. So right now, this is a big story. What this does today, who knows? Because we also have Senator Josh Hawley coming out today. He said this on Twitter yesterday. He said he is going to put a bill on the floor of the Senate for an up-down vote. This bill, we know what it is. It's a $1,200 stimulus check bill. This is pretty much taking the exact language, the text from the CARES Act that was passed back in March. He's going to take pretty much the exact same text. He's putting that into his own bill, and there's a standalone bill for stimulus checks at $1,200. Now, this is great. And this will essentially be not really just a political move, but this is seen as something that has no shot of really passing. There are people that will not support this. And based on my understanding of an up-down vote, if just one senator objects to this, it pretty much squashes the entire thing. So right now, that's kind of where we're at. We're at the point where, okay, let's vote on this. Let's see what happens. Let's see who's willing to support this, who's not willing to support this. And then pretty much the point behind this is technically not to get this passed, because most people see or think that this has no chance of passing. But the point of this is to see in the future, okay, how much support do we have for a $1,200 stimulus check, even with stimulus checks being negotiated in our current proposal? That's what they're doing right now. So it's a little bit of a political game, political stunt, but at the same time, it's a political stunt to actually see some progress and see some relief for the American people. So even though reports don't expect this to pass, I anticipate this to do something. It's going to move the needle a little bit to help with stimulus checks. So right now what we know is that our leaders have continued to work to try to get a stimulus deal done by today. I'm very, very optimistic that they will get a deal done, but I'm not optimistic they get a deal done today. I'm just not. Nancy Pelosi has said over the past few days, we're getting closer. We should see the deal. We should see the text any time. But the truth of the matter is this. We've been waiting for a week to see the text of this bill. We've yet to see it. Who knows if it really exists? The Problem Solvers Caucus could have slapped together 600 pages of blank paper, put it on their pedestal and said, hey, here's our bill. Which essentially that's probably what they did, because as of right now, nobody knows. Now, even though talks have slowed down and negotiations are getting a little bit more intense, the bipartisan group that put together this proposal or this framework, they're actually the Problem Solvers Caucus. They actually put out a press release just yesterday and kind of just urging the two leaders, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, not to give up. Here's exactly what they said from yesterday's press release. Now, I'm not going to read this entire thing. It pretty much just says who is in the Problem Solvers Caucus, but it just says they urge Senate and House leadership to continue moving forward to finalize a COVID-19 emergency relief package. Earlier this week, the senators and the Problem Solvers Caucus shared two bills, one of which the bipartisan COVID-19 Emergency Relief Act of 2020 is serving as a framework for the final COVID-19 relief package. This pandemic has been devastating for millions of Americans, and without congressional action, they will lose the lifelines that are keeping them afloat. We appreciate the ongoing efforts of Leader McConnell, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, and Leader McCarthy to craft an emergency COVID-19 relief package that will help the American people weather the next few months of this pandemic. We know firsthand how hard it can be to find common ground on some of these issues. We encourage the leaders and their staff to continue this important work. By working together, we can and will deliver immediate assistance to the workers, the families, and the businesses that need it most. And yes, at this time, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, they understand what's on the line. They have known this for months. But here's the issue. There are still many issues within this package. Even though Nancy Pelosi said when she saw this $900 billion package come from the Problem Solvers Caucus and that bipartisan group, she said, let's get it done. Let's come to the table and let's get it done. Well, Mitch McConnell came to the table. Nancy Pelosi is at the table waiting. And now they're going back and forth about these things that they have been arguing over for the past 7-8 months. Which makes me question, are they serious about getting a deal done? At this point, I just don't know. But let's go over what is currently being agreed upon and what is currently being worked on inside this roughly $900 billion stimulus package. I wrote it all down on this simple to follow spreadsheet so we can go through it together. So here we go. So this bill of roughly $900 billion, it consists of PPP funding to the amount of $325 billion. Republicans were demanding more. I wrote little notes to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to discuss, but Republicans were demanding more. At first, this was for $288 billion, then it went up to $300 billion, and now it sits at $325 billion. Democrats, are okay with this, and they do support this. However, Republicans want more money specifically to go to the restaurant industry, because the restaurant industry is currently being hammered the most. Now, if you want to keep a screenshot of this, go ahead, pause the video, take a screenshot so that you can kind of follow along or keep this for your own records. As for stimulus checks, that is going to cost roughly $150 billion. It's going to be $600 for filers, $600 for their spouse, and $600 for every dependent. Based on what we know, the same income limits apply. If you make under $75,000 as an individual or $150,000 as a couple filing jointly, you would qualify for the full amount. What you need to keep in mind is right now, what is being said is Mitch McConnell, okay, he came out and he had a quote or a statement the other day that said stimulus checks are kind of one of the pillars of this proposal. However, they still feel it's important to get $600 stimulus checks, and this is coming from President Trump and Steve Mnuchin as well, that it's important to get $600 stimulus checks to filers and possibly give a little bit extra to families. And I believe that's where the $600 to $700 is coming from. So it could potentially be $600 for individuals and $700 for individuals with families. So I don't want to say that's exactly what's happening, but there is a couple reports saying that is what is on the table. Now, this isn't CNN, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, anything like that. So I'm not going to come out and say this is for sure happening, but this is potentially what is on the table. As for unemployment benefits, it's going to be for $180 billion. It's going to be for $300 per week as a bonus, and it's going to last for 12 to 13 weeks, from January 1st to March 31st. What you need to understand right now, all reports indicate that the unemployment programs, the pandemic unemployment programs, the emergency unemployment program, those are actually going to be extended for 16 weeks. Not for the 12 to 13 like the unemployment boost will be extended. We still have education funding for $82 billion. That's unchanged. Transportation funding is $45 billion. However, they're currently negotiating whether or not to take out about $17 billion that was earmarked for the airlines. So even though Nancy Pelosi said to the airline industry and to these executives when they spoke months ago, don't lay off employees. We're going to get you your money. Now it's currently being discussed. Well, you might not see anything. So we'll see what happens there. That will be an interesting turn of events. We also have $16 billion for vaccine distribution and testing. This is critical. A lot of states need this funding right now. Rental assistance for $25 billion. Now, there is rental assistance for $25 billion. That's not being negotiated. That is currently set. $25 billion guaranteed for rental assistance. What's currently being negotiated is Republicans are saying if we give renters $25 billion in rental assistance, they do not need an extension of the federal eviction moratorium. So why don't we just get rid of the eviction moratorium? That's a currently hotly contested policy as well. As Democrats are like, no, we need this. If they don't have this, the rental assistance, the funding will not come in on time and they will get evicted. So it really does nobody any good. So as far as food assistance, we're at $13 billion. Again, that's unchanged. It used to be $26 billion, but they technically cut that and farm assistance and split those two, separately. So they can negotiate those, separately, I guess. And what's currently being discussed is actually increase the SNAP benefit past the 15% boost that currently has. So that could potentially get up to 20, maybe even 25%. But that's currently being discussed as well. That's one of the other things that's creating a little bit of an issue. Farm assistance, $13 billion. Mental health, $5 billion. Healthcare relief, $35 billion. Childcare, $10 billion. Lenders Act, $10 billion. Broadband, $10 billion. United States Postal Service, $10 billion. The SOS Act. This is something new we haven't really discussed here on this channel. But this is something that's pretty much being put in front of Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell by Leader Chuck Schumer. And it's for $17 billion. But the point of this is to provide live venues with some relief in order to stay open. I believe you can get up to like $12 million or something like that. I don't know the exact terms, but right now Republicans don't really support this because that's technically part of the PPP funding. So why don't they just go and get some from there? So Republicans right now don't support the SOS Act, but they do support live venues going to get funding, but do it in the right way, do it the way we tell you, and that's through the PPP funding program. So there's also a thing for Fema funding. Right now there's multiple reports. One says Republicans are open to providing FEMA with additional funding to the tune of about $1 billion. That seems extremely low. And then we have other reports saying that Democrats want $90 billion to go to FEMA funding. And again, this is a hotly contested item. Republicans do not support $90 billion because essentially that would bring this package up to just under $1 trillion. And Republicans want to stay under $1 trillion, but at the same time, this hasn't even been looked at by the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. So even though they're saying this is going to be about $900 billion, the Congressional Budget Office could come in, look at this and be like, yeah, this is going to come in about $950 billion. And Republicans are like, whoa, that's more than we wanted to spend. I don't support it. Now, let's get back to the table. So that's one of the reasons why they have to be very, very careful with what they put in this bill. And then we also have the Federal Reserve lending programs. It's about 5 to 6 different programs. This is where Steve Mnuchin pulled roughly $455 billion back from the Federal Reserve, took it away from these programs. Now, I didn't put an amount here, I just put open because what's currently being discussed, and Senator Pat Toomey, he has a bill that would essentially close these programs and there'd be no way to reopen them. And so what Republicans want is just to have this canceled. This was a short-term, pretty much a short-term program to get businesses up and running, keep them funded so that they didn't close or have to file bankruptcy. However, Democrats are saying, well, this is supposed to give Joe Biden options. This is supposed to be a way for Joe Biden and Janet Yellen to come in and potentially provide and open up these programs again for companies and corporations to stay afloat. But Republicans are saying, no, we're going to close these down. And specifically Pat Toomey saying, we're going to close all these down because we don't want you to come in, say, okay, let's just leave it open. We're not going to use it, but let's just leave it open. And then when Joe Biden comes in and the next administration comes in, then they're like, well, let's open those up again. Let's put in like $500 billion. Well, if we pass this one, this is what Republicans are saying, if we pass this program or this package for $900 billion and then the next administration comes in and says, well, let's do another bill for, let's say, another $1 trillion and provide $500 billion to this federal lending program, well, that pretty much just doubled the price of this program, this proposal. And we're not for that. So right now, that's just one of the things that's currently being discussed. And again, there's so many issues right now that it's hard to see Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell coming to an agreement sometime today. So as you can see, there's still a lot of good things inside this bill that are not being worked on. They already said, yes, we agree to that. Let's move that off the table. That's agreed upon. Let's stick to the next thing. All right, what's the next item on the table? But here's what you need to understand. In order to see the good, we must get agreement on everything else first. If the federal lending program has no agreement, and Nancy Pelosi is like, no, we can't pass a bill that does not have agreement on what we can do with this program. Well then, stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, the PPP funding, rental assistance, food assistance, education funding, the funding for vaccines and testing, all of that is in limbo. And that is going to hurt millions and millions of Americans. Now, today, I anticipate we're going to see a lot of new news coming out from Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. We might hear from Chuck Schumer and Kevin McCarthy as well. I would anticipate we'd hear from some of our top leaders as well, both in the House and in the Senate. So, As we hear more, I promise I'll come back and share more. Right now, millions of government employees are just waiting, sitting there waiting, just in the anticipation, are they going to have a job tomorrow or not? Are they going to have one? Because right now, it looks like millions of government employees will not be going to work on Monday. Because as of right now, it does not look like they're going to have any agreement. So this is what we know right now. But as I promised, if I hear more, I'll come back and share more. So consider subscribing so I can continue to keep you updated on everything that's going on. Just want to thank you guys for watching this stimulus update. Share this video with your friends, family, and colleagues over on Facebook as well, so they too can stay updated. And I'll see you guys on the next one.